Right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whenever it is you're watching this. This is the devotional for March 2nd, 2017. And we are still in our series, Unashamed, Paul's letter to the Romans. And I am picking up on just two verses today, Romans 3, 19 through 20. So two of the most important verses in the entire Bible. We'll talk about why that is so today. So again, if you are listening, you can just kind of listen with me as I read, or if you're watching this video, you can read with me here as I read from the Word of God. This is the New American Standard Version. So verse 19, here's what it says. Now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be closed and all of the world may become accountable to God. Verse 20, because by the works of the law, no flesh shall be justified in his sight, for through the law comes the knowledge of sin. So reflection questions here are the three things I kind of want to focus on in the applications of it. So there's three big things I think if you get here. Okay, if you understand what he means by law, okay, what does that mean? And then when we understand what knowledge of sin is, and then even this phrase here, to become accountable to God. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so those are the three things here you see in the reflection questions to think about. What does Paul mean when he uses the word law? What are the effects and implications of us coming to the knowledge of our sin? And why are we accountable to God? And what does that even mean? So here you go. So now is Randy's little reflection time to look through this. So I'm going to get off that picture. Look at that. That's glorious. That's my senior in high school, by the way, if you didn't know that. Awesome. So here's a word that we're getting into. Let's get that off right here. And let's jump into what we mean by law. So we talked about this, I talked about this past Saturday at service. So again, we have here, whatever the law says, those are under the law, by the works of the law, through knowledge of law. I mean, so, okay, so this is obviously a huge theme. If you've been reading through Romans with us so far, we get this idea. And I talked about it there's two ways to look at this. Literally, I think what Paul's talking about here is the idea of the Mosaic law, okay, the adherence of the Old Testament law that God set out from Mount Sinai and Exodus all the way through the beginning of the book of Numbers, the law, okay, the Mosaic law where Jesus summarizes it this way in the Sermon on the Mount. Okay, the very last verse in chapter 5, my least favorite verse in the entire Bible, says, be perfect then as your heavenly Father is perfect. Okay, that's what the law is. Okay, the law is, hey, listen, here's the standard. Be absolutely perfect. Okay, and God in the Old Testament and then Jesus takes it up to a whole nother level in the New Testament, explains what that law is. And it's basically this: love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, and mind and strength. And the second one is love your neighbor as yourself. If you know that story of when he's saying that, neighbor, I think would also be Jesus. So perfectly whole, complete love without any blemish or spot or record for your love for God. Perfectly. Okay, and then the application that would be treating people as such as well. So that's what the law is according to the Bible. And again, we talked about it. If you're not a believer, in chapter 2, Paul talks about that everybody has this consciousness, and God's not going to judge you on the 10 Commandments if you don't believe it. He's not going to judge you on the Sermon on the Mount if you don't believe it. He's not going to judge you according to the Bible if you don't believe in the Bible. That's not what the law is for you. The law for you is what your own conscience bears testimony about with you, right? What do you approve as right or wrong? Do you live up to your own standard of right or wrong, to which anybody who has any ounce of self-awareness can say, no. So we know that whatever the law says, speaks to those who are under the law, whichever law you go, right? So every mouth will be closed, every law, okay? Because through the works of the law, your own or the biblical one, no one's justified. No one, okay? And through the law comes your own knowledge. That's what we mean by law. God's one or your own, but check out, just the way he talks about it, right? It says, so that every mouth. So that's how we know it's not just the Jewish law, okay? He's summarizing what he said in chapters 1 and 2, okay? Because chapter 2 talks about this as well. They become a law to themselves when they do instinctively what is right in chapter 2. But every mouth, right? He didn't say so that every Jewish mouth or every believer of the Old Testament's mouth may be closed. And just to make sure we get it, he says, and all of the world, right, will become accountable to God. Those who obey the Mosaic, the Jesus, or their selfish law, whatever it is, all the world is becoming accountable to law, right? No flesh, and he says it again here, no flesh. He's getting real descriptive in 2 verses here. He is making sure that we are clear that this is a thing for everybody. So it's not just a Jewish thing, not just an Old Testament. If you don't believe in the Old Testament, cool, that doesn't get you off the hook. You're still in trouble. So that's what he means by the law, okay? That's what he means by that. Second word we're looking at, okay, is the knowledge of our sin, okay? So through this law, okay, this is progressive, this is how this builds, okay? So, okay, we have a law, either one written in our heart or one written in the text. We have this law. And because of this now, the knowledge of sin. So what the heck does this word knowledge mean? So we go to biblos.com. I'm here in Romans 3. I clicked on this little part here. It says Greek. And there, boom, there you have it. Okay, this word knowledge down here. Epignosis, which is such a cool word. I like it because it comes from, I think it down here, yeah, it comes from epigenosko, which is a really cool word. So I'm going to click on that. It's the same word, epigenosko, epigenosis, a little smidge of a difference, but not much at all, okay? Here's what it means, to know exactly, okay? And then it's kind of cool. It's two words, epi, you see it right here, epi, which is intensifying. So whatever comes after epi, it intensifies it even more. So gnosko is the second word, which is, you see right here. So if you look at these numbers here, it's 1097, gnosko. So to gnosko means to know through personal relationship. I think they even use an example here. Did they use it? I thought I saw it. No. But like, yeah, when it says that Mary, I thought I did it. Man, I guess it's not. I thought it was maybe it's in the other one. Yeah, I think it's in gnosis. Nope. Just kidding. Sorry. I apologize. So yeah. So like when the Bible says in the New Testament that Mary had never known Joseph, right? So how can this be? For I've never known my husband. That's the word gnosko. So again, which means sex, sexual intimacy. So when he says to know through personal relationship, experiential knowing, that through direct relationship, this builds on epi. The verbal idea here is the general context, right? So epi, right? So this idea of epi, gnosko. So it doesn't mean just to know. Gnosko means pretty intimate knowing, and epi intensifies even that. So something as intimate as sexual knowing, so knowing through experience, like, right? Like I might have an idea or a vague knowledge of who Michael Jordan is and certain things about his character, but I don't gnosko him, right? It's very different. Like I gnosko Eleanor in the biblical way in that sense, but also gnosko can be like with Dewan, right? Like me and Dewan are really close friends. I know him very intimately, not to the physical intimacy. That's just for a man and a wife, but in a sense of like a relational intimacy. It's not just a far away distance kind of knowledge, right? Like I'm aware that the son is out there, but I don't have like a gnosko knowledge with it. That is very different, experiential. Like I know that being a parent is hard, right? Distant knowledge, but then when you become a parent, now you have an experiential knowledge of what that means, right? I know that college can be difficult and challenging intellectually when I'm in high school, but then when I get into college, now I can gnosko, right? So this word knowledge of sin isn't just I know about it, I'm aware of it intellectually, but I know it intimately, and it has the word epi in front of it, which intensifies it even more and more and more. So now you look at this text, right? That through the law comes the gnosko, the epignosko of sin, right? You don't just aware of your sin. That's not just an awareness thing, but this is a intense intimacy of what sin is. Excuse me. So I wrote it this way: it's a firsthand knowledge, not just a general understanding, but knowledge that is gained through personal experience. And when I thought about this, it kind of forced me. I had a thought of tying into Genesis 3, the Garden of Eden, when God says, "Don't eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but from the knowledge of the tree of life." Right? Because if you eat from the knowledge of true and evil, and if you know things, that's going to lead to death. That's sin, and it's going to lead to your death. Which was interesting. You take that idea and go through it, right? Because it says before they ate from the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, before they knew about sin and death and what their inadequacies, right? They were naked, it says, and unashamed. Right? They didn't realize, they didn't know, they didn't have any kind of epignosko moment of what sin and death and their inadequacy. They just were hanging out with God, doing intimacy with God. And I don't think at that point, and this is conjecture, I don't know if they realized how vastly great their God was. It's kind of like a kid when he's a little baby, knowing versus like when he gets a little bit older, he has more of a knowledge of who his dad is. Maybe he knows now how fantastic his dad is or how terrible his dad is. But when you're 2 years old, 3, 4, 5-year-old, your dad or mom hung the moon, right? They're mom and dad. You don't know about it, okay? I think that's what life was like pre-fall, okay? But then post-fall, when Adam and Eve ate from the tree, they had in an instant the knowledge of sin because they were going from naked and unashamed to now instantly naked. They were aware of their nakedness and they were ashamed of it instantly. I think, just get you a picture of the Garden of Eden, what Adam and Eve got instantly there, we get and we come to know slowly through experience and pain, right? That's kind of hard for me to hear a little bit. Man, what they came to know instantly, wow, what an intense fall that must have been. Because for me, my knowledge of my sin and the consequences of that, which will be the next one, right? The gnosko, experiential knowledge of something, they got instantly. Just like Jesus epignoskoed the punishment of our sin on the cross. He got all of it. What would take us an eternity to experientially know in hell, Jesus got in a moment on the cross. A moment. His knowledge of the weight of sin and death, he got, boom, inside. What an intense word this is, an understanding of what this is, okay? So this idea of the knowledge of sin, the gnosko, I mean, that means the shame of your sin, the inadequacy of yourself, the awareness of your vulnerability to God, but also to others, right? This is what he's saying, through the same as them, okay? Self-justification leaves you naked and ashamed. That's what he's saying. Through the law, through trying to justify yourself, through looking at your own abilities and skills and thing, right? Through your own law, or definitely through the God-given Old Testament and New Testament law, you begin to realize and become ashamed, and you become very acutely, experientially aware knowledge here of your inadequacy, of your vulnerability to God. Like, holy cow, God really deserves to kill me at any moment. And this is what I think partially what the fear of the Lord means. Not like an afraid, like, oh God, he's going to smite me any minute, which, I mean, that I think is a part of it. But there's also this awe and reverence for, as I'm aware of who I am and my inadequacies, it intensifies his superiority, right? Does that make sense? So through the law becomes the epignosko of my sin, okay? And because of that, then all the world becomes accountable to God, okay? And this was a really interesting word, this word accountable. We'll go back here to Romans chapter 3, verse 19, okay? And you already see it here. It's this word, I'll look at it here. Hupidikos, okay? Which is interesting, which means brought to trial, which is not quite the tense that we use here, but are answerable to, are liable to, brought under the judgment of. So because we all have a knowledge of our sin, because we all sin, because the law has now brought us to this sense, we are now answerable to, are brought under the judgment of, or another way of translating this and think about it is one who has lost a lawsuit, who is guilty and is a debtor, okay? So that's what that word means, right? Okay, let's go back. Okay, so because of all that, accountable to God, I don't know if accountable, I mean, it's a good word, but it's not my favorite because, again, you're accountable to God, you're answerable to God because you're judged guilty, right? It's like, I have to give a justification of my life to God. Okay, that's what it means. Because of law, now every mouth will be closed, and everybody's going to have to give an account. Maybe is word, and they have to answer to the judgment of God. They're going to have to justify their existence and their acceptability to God. So because of law comes a knowledge of sin. And because of that, we feel the weight, the epignosko, we feel the weight of what that is. And because of we've all sinned, we're now all are answerable to and indebted to God, and we're in very, very, very big trouble. Okay, so summarize these three things. What does it mean when we use the word law? We got that. Knowledge of our sin. What are the implications of that? It's intense. Why are we answerable to God? Because we sin. Okay, because we've missed the mark that he set up for us, our own or his. And what does that even mean? Okay, it means that we're going to be under the judgment of, we've lost the lawsuit. We're in big, big trouble. And it's not just a couple people. It's all the world. It's every mouth. And it's no flesh. Because look, how do you know that this is what the accountable means, right? You need to give you have to justify your existence to God. Because by the works of the law, here it is, no flesh will be justified in his sight. None. And this accountability is what he's talking about here, where none were not going to be there. Okay, so why is this such encouraging two verses, so pivotal for understanding? Okay, because here's why I think. Okay, you've got to understand these two verses before the gospel makes sense, before you can understand even the application of the gospel and how to change it. If you don't understand what Paul has been saying for the first three chapters, and this is kind of the culmination, okay, this is a summation of the end of chapter 1, 2, and this part to chapter 3. This is the last two verses. Tomorrow, I think Chris is going to come in with chapter 21 with a but now. Okay, but you've got to understand the darkness of sin, the weight of sin. You have to epignosko your sin, and that you're going to be, and that we all are accountable to God, have to give a judgment to God, right? This is that black cloth underneath the diamond. This is the precursor to understanding the gospel. This is the foundation to the gospel. This understanding of these two verses and the knowledge of, in the law, knowledge of sin and accountability to God, understanding those three words and those three ideas, right, is the ABCs to the gospel grammar. Just like you have to learn ABCs in order to understand grammar, you have to understand sin in order to understand the gospel. You can't start at good news. You've got to get the bad news first. You've got to see how bleak the picture is before the rest of the Bible makes any sense. So that's why these two verses is incredibly huge, and the application and implications of that are all day long, okay? And note the purpose of and the design of the law and the rules is not to make you a sinner. Look, because through the law births sinners. No, that's not what it's made. It's not to make you a sinner, but it's to confirm that you are one, right? I think Paul has two main motives in doing this. Why does he want to confirm? It's not my sin, right? We'll get to later in Romans 5. It's not my sin that puts the wrath of God on me. I'm born. I mean, God goes, right, I'm born this way, right? It's not my sin. It's the first Adam's, because through the one came guilt of all. So we're all sins. So it's not my sin that condemns me. It's my sin that confirms the righteousness of God's wrath on me and that I am one. Okay. And why does Paul do this? Why is this so important for us to understand these two verses? Before we talk about Jesus and get to anything, you have to understand all of the Old Testament. This is the lesson the whole Old Testament is trying to teach us. Everybody. Law comes knowledge of sin, which makes us accountable to God, and nobody can stand for that. Nobody. No matter what God does to us, he's not going to be able to transform us into be able to fix the law. We can't do it. Read the Old Testament, look at all the things he does for Israel, and still they can't fix themselves. Okay? You've got to understand that. Okay? And I think two reasons why we've got to understand this. The first one is pride. God, we have to understand this because it breaks pride. When we realize this, we can't look at ourselves with a whole lot of pride, and we definitely can't talk about ourselves to other people or treat other people with a sense of pride. And this is huge because pride is what kills our relationship with ourselves, because we're not able to see the truth about ourselves. And it kills our relationship with other people. Nobody wants to be around, nobody enjoys being around a prideful, arrogant person. Nobody. Not even prideful, arrogant people like being around other people who are prideful and arrogant. Nobody does it. It kills your relationship with yourself, and it absolutely destroys humanity's ability to relate to one another and even to nature in that sense, right? But the second reason why this is such an important thing for us to understand this text, okay, what the applications of the knowledge of sin does for us, not only does it destroy our pride, but it's got to destroy our self-reliance. It's got to destroy self-reliance. This is why you have to get this, self-reliance, because self-reliance kills your relationship with God. Right? Pride destroys relationship with yourself, with other people, and with nature. But self-reliance, right? The ability to uphold the law, I can justify myself. Okay? This is why this verse here, no one will be justified in his sight. Self-reliance is not going to get you. You can't do it. Forget the Old Testament if you don't believe in it. Just be a nice person all the time. Well, nobody can do that. Exactly. There's nothing you can do. You are not the solution to your problems. And this destroys self-reliance in that, right? So this is why for us, this is such a precursor. And even with evangelism, when we're talking evangelistically to other people, we're trying to make disciples, okay? We've got to understand that, listen, hey, this is how we talk about it. We realize that human flourishing, God, the reason God hates, we're accountable to God, we're indebted to God. Okay, the reason why we have to understand this is, listen, this is not going to help human flourishing. Pride, self-reliance is going to destroy humanity, right? Because it's going to kill ourselves, kill our relationship with other people, and our relationship with God, right? You can see how God is disciplining us like children to understand our place and what's wrong with us. He's holding up this mirror to look, hey, look what's wrong. I care about you. I'm not angry with you. I don't hate you. I want you to change. But before I can give you the medicine, you've got to come to the realization that you're broken and you need that, right? If you don't have cancer, it can be living inside of your body for years and you don't even know it. Right? And you're not going to seek out chemo. Who's going to go do chemotherapy when you have no diagnosis of cancer? Hey, I just feel like getting some chemo today. Take some radiation. Nobody's going to do that. But when the knowledge of your broken body and cancer cells in your body, well, then you go to extreme measures to fix it. And this is what God's doing in Romans 19 through 20. And this is what you have to do and I have to do when we're making disciples, when we're engaging those in the world who are not having a relationship with God. It doesn't come from this prideful, arrogant, I'm better than you. It's like, no, do you understand? You have this cancerous thing living inside of you, and so do I. But the good news is what's going to come tomorrow, and with the gospel is that Jesus can fix it. He's got the medicine. He's not just chemo, just going to kill the cells. Right? He'll kill the cells, but then he'll make them new and put new, healthy, good ones in there, and they'll last that way for all of eternity. You'll never have to deal with it again, right? You don't get the good news without the bad news of Romans chapter 3, 19 through 20. So understand it, come to knowledge of it, but then also come to knowledge not just of the sin, but epignosko of the gospel. Don't just know it on a test intellectually, but know it in such a way that it's intimate. It's intensely intimate, more intimate than a husband and a wife. That kind of knowledge is what we call belief. And that kind of belief, as we'll see in the coming weeks, is what will save your soul. So hope you enjoyed that. Hope you got some good thoughts from it and some good applications. Appreciate you guys. Have Have a great week. Always hit us up with comments. Let us know how we can do this better, or things that you like, or other things that you've noticed in these verses as well. So have a great day. Talk to you guys later. Peace.